I had been kind of sick for about a year, and I was never sick in my life. I had been in, I'd been going to NA, Narcotics Anonymous, for 3 years, and I had 2 years of consecutive abstinence from all drugs, and I was feeling worse and worse and worse rather than better and better and better. I had had bouts of diarrhea. I had swollen lymph nodes, and I'd had a series of actually the same sinus infection that wouldn't go away. And she ran a whole bunch of tests, blood counts and hemoglobins, and she tested for mononucleosis, cholesterol levels, sugar levels, everything she could think of. She ran a whole bunch of tests, and I asked her to run the HIV antibody test, and that was the one that came back positive. All the other tests were fine and within normal limits, but the HIV test was positive. So, and she told me to go and have a Western blot at another lab to be sure that, just to kind of double check. So, because the Western blot is more accurate, and because she thought having another lab do it would kind of guarantee that they were my results. So I did that, and that was positive too. My first reaction was, whoa, just whoa. And after that, I went through a period of about a month where I had a bunch of acceptance. I don't know if it's denial now or that first numbness and disbelief of that kind of a diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis, basically. The doctor couldn't tell me very much, so I had to go and ask people. I knew one guy who had been diagnosed with AIDS, and I went and asked him tons and tons and tons of questions, and he had lots of pamphlets and books that he had been able to put together, and he was a real positive guy. But I went through a period of feeling like it was a big challenge and a kind of a dubious honor. I mean, that was my first reaction, was that it was wow, what a challenge, and I had a sense that it was a spiritual challenge more than a physical one. After my diagnosis, I took a month off between jobs, and my daughter and I drove from Dallas to Oregon. We spent the night in Vernal, Utah. We talked. I looked at her. I let her know what my feelings were, what was going on with me, and I listened to hers. There are a lot of things like that are different. My relationships with people are kind of intimate, and I care a lot about what happens internally rather than externally. I'm still involved in my recovery from drugs. That's a kind of a daily, ongoing process. And in order for me not to use drugs, I need to think about that a lot. And I need to be involved with other people that are not using drugs that used to. And that's a pretty important part of it. I'm gentler with myself. I have learned to nurture myself and be more accepting and loving of myself. I do that rather than looking for somebody else to love me and approve of me. I love me and approve of me. I think a lot of people feel that that this is really shameful. There's a lot of judgment about HIV disease. It's like the worst venereal disease, and here we all are, those of us that have it, and we're caught. And we should be ashamed of it. We should be ashamed of how we got it. We should be ashamed of our sexual activity, whether it's heterosexual or homosexual. I did get it sexually, not through an intravenous drug transaction. And a lot of people are scared of it, and a lot of people are ashamed of it, and it's not a nice thing. Nice people don't talk about that. But the truth is that we all need to talk about it a lot. One of the things that's real different since my diagnosis is that I spend a lot of time in communication with my family, my parents, my sisters and brothers. we've always felt that we were close, even if we were geographically distant. But since I've been told I have this terminal illness, my family, my mother calls me, and she didn't used to call me. And my father came, and my father and my mother came to Portland last weekend and took us out for breakfast. My sister who lives here, my daughter and I. And my dad walked me out of the restaurant with his arm around me, and he's not an affectionate man. And I think that has changed for them how they are with me, and it's affected all of our lives in that we see that, well, this isn't just about Nancy. This isn't just about spending time with Nancy and recognizing that she's here today and she might not be here tomorrow, but it's a lot about all of our relationships with everyone, and that I need to tell you today that I care about you and I'm glad you're in my life. I feel like everything in the universe unfolds exactly the way it's designed. I don't have a lot to say about that anyway. God doesn't ask me for input. But what my feeling now is that life unfolds in an orderly, loving, growthful way, and I don't interfere with that. And I have a sense of everything's fine. And I spent years, 20 years, 33 years, not feeling like things were going right. And that's a big difference, major, major shift in how I see the world. I think we choose a lot of this stuff. I think that I'm in collusion with the divine light in the universe, and that we agreed, that I agreed, that I'm a volunteer. And a lot of people have a real hard time with that. You volunteered to have AIDS? Yep. Yep, because I have healed so much through it. And I do a lot of healing. One of the most important things is that they can choose to be ill or well to whatever degree they're able. That's really important information that I have learned, is that I can be well or ill depending on the choices that I make. I feel so much more alive than I have ever felt in my life that it's really hard to acknowledge. I have done a lot of acknowledging. I have done a lot of workshops on death and dying, and I have done a lot of thinking about and looking at the possibility of my own death. And since it doesn't scare me and it isn't imminent that I can tell, I don't. On an intellectual level, yes, I acknowledge that I have a terminal illness, but on an emotional level and on a spiritual level, I don't acknowledge that. Don't ever quit. Don't stop trying. That's really important. I flunked out of art school when I was 18, and I thought it was over. I could never do art again. And I have since learned that I can do art anytime, anywhere, any way I want to. And that was a really important message that keeps getting reaffirmed in different ways. Don't quit, don't stop trying, don't give up. That's really, really important. I think suicide is tragic because it means that people gave up. And I'm just not done yet. I also, if I could leave, I may write letters. I just want everybody to know how much I loved them and how much fun I had with them.